Our readings this morning are full of people who have been cast out by their culture. A childless old man, his old and barren wife, a tax collector named Matthew, many of his colleagues, a whole lot of hungry sinners, and an unclean woman. What they all have in common is that they trust in God, and later, Jesus. Abram believes and acts when God tells him to pull up stakes and leave the land of his ancestors, because God is going to make a great nation of him, this little nobody with no heirs, the fellow that Paul claimed was as good as dead. Sarai, his wife, will have something to do with this great nation notion. However, a few chapters later in Genesis, when this idea comes up again, she's going to laugh at the whole idea that she would have a child. But she's willing to trust in God. Fast forward to Matthew's call, to Jesus' call to Matthew. Follow me. And Matthew did, right into that snake pit of a supper, during which some of the stickler Pharisees asked, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Now, I would add some parentheses in that quote to have it say, tax collectors and those we have decided are sinners. And the woman with the hemorrhages, she does the unthinkable. She reaches out and she touches the fringe of Jesus' cloak. It's unthinkable because as a Jewish woman, she is not supposed to touch a man in public. And because of her bleeding, she is ritually unclean according to Jewish law. She does it because she believes in the healing power of Jesus. Now think about it. None of these people were intrinsically bad. They were made outcasts by the dominant culture. Many of us know what that's like. Being cast out for being a person of color, for being gay, trans, a woman. The list can go on sometimes. And we know just how deliberately some people are continuing to make outcasts right now. All over this country, and frankly all over the world. And yet, at least one of our outcasts this morning went on to cast out others. There's a hint of it in the Old Testament reading. Remember when it says, at that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your offspring I will give this land. I once sat in a seminary classroom discussing this part of Genesis and the whole concept of the promised land, when a young indigenous man sitting in our circle spoke up. I am the Canaanite, he said. And we were called to account for the fact that we too, our ancestors, used God to justify taking much of this country from those latter-day Canaanites. We have to be honest. We all make outcasts at some point. We have to admit it, even if it's easier to point to other people doing it, or to those people who are doing it to us. But we all do it. And it's not pretty. Let me give you an admittedly very tough example. Stay with me. Pat Robertson. It's been a theologically tough few days in certain parts of my Facebook feed since Pat Robertson died on Thursday. The first reaction post I saw from an Episcopalian who's a lobbyist in D.C., noted the irony of Robertson dying during Pride Week. Pride Month. The second post came from a staunch Episcopalian laywoman in Texas. She laid out this scenario. Pat Robertson has died. Imagine his astonishment when Harvey Milk and Sally Ride greet him and tell him they've been asked by God to show him around. And the first people they introduce him to are James Baldwin, Lawrence of Arabia, and Rudolph Nureyev. What, she asks, happens next? 318 people as of Friday afternoon had given this post the thumbs up or love or laughing emoji. 81 people had commented, including myself. I suggested that what happens next is that Robertson gets to choose his drag queen costume for the big bride parade in heaven. It felt almost lethal. And then, some of the people on my Facebook feed began to wonder where exactly Robertson had wound up. And what we mean by forgiveness. Radical forgiveness. And what we mean by endless suffering. Or the ultimate second chance to get right with God and each other. A gay man who taught me church history posted this. To say that Pat Robertson is with God does not negate how many people were killed by his theology. Only that God's loving redemption is stronger. Okay, that's really hard to contemplate about a man that I had readily cast out years ago. One of my lesbian priestly colleagues wondered if Robertson was confused about whether he was in heaven or hell when a whole host of the members of the heavenly chorus greeted him with the love and acceptance he never showed him. But, she added, in my mind, it's when Pat Robertson had to look Matthew Shepard in the eye and found there perfect love and forgiveness that brought him to his knees, asking, pleading for that same forgiveness. I don't have any answers to this question of Pat Robertson and where he is now and what's happening, other than to admit that I struggle mightily with forgiving him. But I'm trying to remember where Jesus sat in this morning's reading. Jesus sat with the outcasts, no matter who gave them that status. He always cut through the value judgments of all parts of the culture. And he pushed open and wide the boundaries of acceptance and worthiness. And his inclusiveness was threatening. It threatened the laws and the mores of first century Judaism, and to a certain extent, to their Roman occupiers as well. In addition to that dining with the marginal people thing, he healed on the Sabbath, which according to the Jewish authorities meant he was working on the Sabbath. He did things that violated those ritual purity laws, like letting unclean people touch him, touching unclean people. That's just not how good Jews in Jesus' time behaved. It made people uncomfortable, to say the least. But when asked about it once, Jesus replied, "Do you think I've come to the earth to bring peace?" We're called to love the outcasts, the sinners, the ones our society and our political culture would just as soon leave in the ditch. We're called to keep to keep trying to understand each other. God knows it's hard. God knows it's hard. Our presiding bishop, Michael Curry, often says it's easy to love. He wants us to strive to make and remake relationships, reconciling our differences, not obliterating them or each other, but reconciling. In our Book of Common Prayer, upon which we base our worship, we have a Q&A, aka the Catechism, tucked way in the back of the book. And at the top of page 855, you'll find this question: what is the mission of the church? And you'll find that the answer is, the mission of the church is to restore all people to unity with God and each other in Christ. Let me say that again. The mission of the church is to restore all people to unity with God and each other in Christ. And God knows it's